doors suddenly closed, trapping his shoulders between them. And before he could react, the elevator shot upward. It pulled his body up with it, while his head hit the top of the doorway, and the force instantly decapitated him. A woman saw the whole thing inside the elevator, and after his death, she was trapped for 20 minutes with his headless body until rescuers finally freed her. The doors suddenly. If you had a whoopee cushion the size of a Cybertruck, it would send out a blast of air strong enough to push your friend over. But if you made it the size of a house, it could blow cars down a street. And if you made it as big as a city, one huge squeeze could rip off roofs, flip cars, and blow trees right out of the ground. If you had a whoopee cushion, the toilet would flush even while the submarine was deep underwater. It used a complex system of valves, and only trained crew were able to use it. But when the captain went to the toilet, it didn't flush properly, and when someone tried to fix it, he opened the wrong valve. This caused water to flood in, and it reacted to the submarine's batteries, releasing a deadly gas. Choking and out of options, they were forced to surface, only to be spotted by the enemy. And moments later, the submarine sank, destroyed by its own toilet. The toilet would flood. Crack the cold eggs in a pan and add a chunk of butter. Stir them together over medium heat. This cooks them slowly while the butter oils the pan. As you mix, scrape the bottom to prevent it from burning. And every 30 seconds, take them off the heat for 10 seconds while stirring. This cooks the eggs gradually and folds air into the mix, making them fluffy and soft. After 3 minutes, take them off and add cream to stop them from cooking. Then season with salt and pepper to finish off your perfect eggs. Crack the cold eggs in a pan and add a chunk of butter. Stir them together over medium heat. An ant can carry 50 times its body weight, and if you weighed 150 pounds, it would take about 1 million ants to carry you. Except that ants don't have very good muscular coordination when it comes to large objects. Even though each ant could lift a tiny fraction of your weight in theory, as a group, each of the ants would try to lift you at different times and in different directions, leaving you with 1 million painful bites. An ant can carry 50 times. If you tried to push a shark back into the ocean, it could easily twist and bite you. This is because its jaw is designed to snap sideways, making it easy to grab anything nearby. Instead, help it breathe by splashing water over its gills. Then stand behind the fins where it can't reach you and push gently towards deep water. As soon as it moves, get out of the way fast before it turns back. If you tried to push a shark, he bit into the man's face, tearing at his flesh after he had ripped his clothes. The attack went on for almost 20 minutes before a police officer finally arrived, but he only growled and kept up the brutal assault. The officer finally shot him, but it did nothing to stop the attack. It took another 4 bullets before he was killed. Police believe he was high on bath salts, which cause paranoia and hallucinations. Incredibly, his victim survived after losing 80% of his face. He bit into. They would roll ink over a metal letter before pressing them onto paper. These letters were each placed by hand, spelling out every word. To keep things organized, they stored the big letters in the upper compartments, since they weren't used as much. But the smaller letters were needed all the time, so they were kept in the lower compartments, making them easier to grab. Over time, people started referring to them as uppercase and lowercase letters. They would roll ink over a metal letter. She had to shave her hairy nose every few days just to look normal. You see, she was attacked by a dog, which bit off a chunk of her face. To fix the damage, doctors pulled down a piece of her forehead, using it to replace the missing flesh. But the new skin included part of her scalp, and the hair follicles were transplanted with it. Once it healed, they started to grow, giving her a hairy nose. But eventually, she actually grew to like it. She had to shave her hairy nose every few days just to look normal. You see, she was attacked by a dog. The teller could secretly press a button with their foot if they were being robbed. That button would set off a loud bang. Then a hidden can would spray thick yellow gas all over the room. The gas would make it really hard to breathe and cause painful coughing, and the robber would get dizzy and pass out within seconds. But everyone else in the bank would also breathe in this gas, meaning workers and customers would be trapped, coughing and choking, which is why the system never caught on. The teller could secretly He crushed up a butterfly, drew it up into a needle, and injected himself with it. And he did this because of an online challenge. But butterflies actually contain poisonous chemicals. He began throwing up almost immediately as the toxins spread throughout his body. And inside his veins, the poison triggered a reaction, causing them to swell. As it traveled, his organs began shutting down one by one. Doctors rushed to help, but it was already too late. He was dead, all because of a dumb trend. He crushed up a butterfly, drew it up into a needle, and injected him. He jumped out as his plane was hit by enemy fire, but as he parachuted to the ground, they kept shooting. So he played dead, but a plane flew in close to inspect him. And as it opened its canopy, he whipped out his pistol. Before the pilot could react, he fired 4 rounds into the cockpit. The fighter spun out of control while the man landed on the ground. And even though he was captured, he was later celebrated as a hero. He jumped out as his... If you peeled off as the your body would lose moisture almost immediately, causing severe dehydration. Next, you'd have no barrier to stop bacteria, so infections would spread quickly through your body. And you'd also lose heat quickly, leading to hypothermia. Finally, exposed blood vessels would leak fluid, leading to shock, a drop in blood pressure that stops organs from working. And within hours, it would be impossible to survive. If you peeled off... As the numbers flashed, he realized he had just won $31 million. Overjoyed, he bought a mansion for himself and houses for his family. He handed out cash to friends, donated to his church, and even gave money to strangers. But soon, the excitement faded. And this happened because no matter how much your life improves, your brain eventually adjusts, bringing you back to your normal baseline level of happiness. Meaning that no matter what, you'll eventually lose the feeling. The man became depressed and got angry when people asked him for things. He became so upset that his wife left him and took the kids. Alone and overwhelmed, he locked himself in his room. The jackpot that initially changed his life ultimately led him to end it. If you fired a bullet made of diamond, you might think it could tear through anything because diamonds are the hardest substance in the world. But they're also brittle, meaning they shatter under extreme force. When fired, the pressure inside the gun barrel would cause the diamond to crack before it even leaves. Now, if you shot it with a crossbow, it might be gentle enough to keep it intact. But at this lower speed, it wouldn't be going fast enough to do any serious damage. If you fired a bullet made of diamond, you might think it could tear through anything. He ran around his apartment in virtual reality, but the game didn't map his apartment properly, and as he played, he tripped on a glass table. He landed hard, which shattered it instantly, and dozens of glass shards sliced into his body. With no one there to help, he bled out quickly, and by the time he was found, he had died in both realities. He ran around his... You might think shooting zombies is the... As she sneezed, it ruptured a disc in her spine, and when it collapsed, a nerve got trapped between her 2 vertebrae. Suddenly, she couldn't move, and even though she had 3 separate operations, she still suffered extreme pain. For the next 2 years, she was bedridden, needing painkillers so strong she would hallucinate. But finally, doctors inserted a plastic cage around her spine, relieving pressure on the pinched nerve. And within a week, she was walking again and holding in her sneezes. As she sneezed, it ruptured a... If you flushed a toilet at the bottom of the ocean, it would send about a gallon of seawater spinning down the drain. But the ocean holds over 300 quintillion gallons of water, meaning if you started flushing right now, it would take over 61 trillion years to drain the entire thing. Now, if you had a toilet bigger than the United States, you could do it in one flush. If you flushed a toilet they pulled out the bear's teeth and ripped out its claws to make it a fair fight. And they even cut tendons in its arm to stop it from grabbing its opponents. You see, these bears were used in live wrestling matches, which were held in bars in the 90s. People would fight the trained bears, and if they won, they could claim a cash prize. Some people would even cheat by getting the animals drunk before the match. But the bears were still far stronger, easily pinning the wrestlers to the ground. They pulled out the bear's teeth and ripped out its claws to make it a fair fight. And they even cut tendons in its arm to stop it from grabbing its opponents. You see, these bears were used in live wrestling matches, which were held in bars in the 90s. People would fight the trained bears, and if they won, they could claim a cash prize. Some people would even cheat by getting the animals drunk before the match. But the bears were still far stronger. If you're headed straight for a waterfall and can't escape, position the kayak to face the waterfall and stop paddling. Then hold your paddle with one end in the water to keep you steady. As you go over the edge, throw it behind you and tuck your body forward. This will help you land vertically, and you might make it out in one piece. If you're headed